Oh yeah, see? Oil there. Oil there. That's a telltale sign that we've got a leak in the back of the motor. What's up guys? My name is Andy, and on this video, we're gonna go after an oil leak that I have on my 1966 Fastback. I suspect that it's the rear main seal, so we're gonna take everything apart and see if we can get after it. What I'm gonna also do is, while I'm in there, I'm gonna replace the oil pan, put a new one in there, and I've got some new fasteners to go with that. I've also got the Velcro one-piece gasket set. I'm a big fan of these. They're really easy to install, and when you're doing stuff by yourself, this really makes it easy to be a one-man show. And then I also have a set of Velcro rear main seals. This car comes with a two-piece rear main seal. The 289 and 302s, I think upward to like 1983 or something like that, had a two-piece rear main seal. Makes it really easy to replace. You don't have to pull the transmission, whether you have an automatic or a manual. You can pull the oil pan, pull that rear main cap, and we can pull these seals out and replace them with the simplest of tools. Pretty much anybody can do it. So let's go ahead and get in there and see what we're working with. All right guys, let's take a look at what we've got underneath here. So I can tell by how wet everything is underneath here that's obviously where my leaks are coming from. I got some leaks here on the drive or on the garage floor. So everything's pretty oily back here. I'm guessing this has been a problem for a little while. We've got quite a bit to do. The best way to do this, we got to obviously drain the oil first, and then we need to take the oil pan off. Before we take the oil pan off, we need to remove the starter, and then we should take this idle arm off, and that will drop this steering arm down just a little bit, and then we'll take this crossmember bar off, then we can drop the oil pan, and it'll be a lot easier to get this out when these pieces are moved and out of the way. So let's get that done, we'll get this out of the way, and then we'll go from there. All right, now we got that oil pan off, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna let this stuff drip for a while. There's quite a bit of oil still off of the sump here, and there's lots of little oils off of little points and stuff, all the heads of these bolts and stuff, and as this oil continues to just drip off, we'll just let it catch in the oil pan for now, and just let that kind of settle up. In the meantime, I've got some work to do. So the bolt back here for this cross member sheared off as I was taking that off, and then this one I had to cut off because it just sat there and it just spun inside the frame. It wasn't going anywhere. So now that cross member is useless. I'm gonna have to figure something else out there. And then also this bolt right here, the head of that sheared off when I was taking that off. So I gotta figure out how I'm gonna get that out. And then I also have a lot of cleaning to do. I gotta get this old gasket, this old seal out of there, get this whole surface all cleaned up. And that's gonna take a little bit of time, which is great because I've got time while this thing's dripping and getting cleaned off of there. And then while you're here is a good time to go ahead and clean all this stuff back here and get all this stuff just cleaned up and get access to everything. Since you have access to everything, you can just clean everything up. And then we'll also put a new oil filter in here because we're going to be changing that out because we're putting new oil in. So I've got some work to do, and we'll just let this thing drip for a little while. All right, we got this surface all cleaned up along here. We got that bolt out of there. We put a new oil filter in. Everything's ready to go to put everything back together, but first we still got to get that rear main seal out. And how we're going to do that, we're just going to take these two bolts out of this main cap, and then we're just going to put a screwdriver in the bore of one of these shoulders here, and we can just kind of wiggle it a little bit, and it should just break that free. We can pull that main cap down out of the way, and we can get to those rear main seals. Okay, so that was a surprise. What I had in here was the original rope seal that came on these, or at least somebody replaced it at some point, but those rope seals are kind of a pain to get out. I didn't film what I had done to get that out of there because I had struggled so much with it, and I might have said some stuff I probably don't want to say on camera. I tried to drive it through like you drive the regular seal, and I ran a punch through here, tried to drive it out this side, and that just made it worse. So then I stuck a screw up inside there and just kind of threaded it in and then pulled that out, and it pulled it out in chunks, and this is what it looks like here. Ideally, you know, you get the whole thing out in one big piece, and this was the largest piece, and these are kind of a pain, so just a lot of patience to get those out of there, and you'll be able to get it. But now that we got that out, I'm going to go ahead and get this surface cleaned up inside here, and then we can go ahead and install the new Velcro gasket that's just going to slide up inside there. All right, here's that bearing cap that we pulled off of there. This is an opportunity for you to not only inspect the bearing, but also just inspect everything else in the cap. And we're going to pull this old rope seal out of here. And I don't recommend putting these back in unless you're trying to go for originality. There's the new seals like these Velcro units here. There's the part number. These are just a better seal, easier to install, and should last a little longer. But also, you can see this seal is pretty worn down. I would, you know, some of you guys out there could probably say that it's at its end of its life. It probably is. I've got some different plans for this motor, so I'm not worried about these seals right now. Or I'm sorry, these bearings. I'll get to these when I do a different, I'm gonna do a motor build. But before we put these new seals, this new two-piece neoprene style seal in, we need to pull that pin out of there. And that pin, see how there's kind of a hole in there, that keeps this seal, you know, clocked, so it doesn't do this as the crank is spinning. So we need to drive that out. We'll just get a little punch, we'll drive that out, and then we can go ahead and put the new seal in place. And there, see, it's pretty simple, just a little pin, pull that piece out of there, and then we'll go ahead and clean up this main cap and get it ready to put that seal in real quick. The most important step in this part is not only getting this cleaned out, but really so that the seal is facing the right way. If the bearing cap sits here and the crank goes this way towards the front of the motor, and you got the flywheel and stuff back on this end, you want this lip facing towards the front, towards the front of the car. So in this case, we're going to set this lip and this piece just inside here like so, but we also want to clock it like this, just a little bit. The reason why is that I don't want this seam to be at the same point as this surface here. So if I can clock it just a little bit like that, maybe stick it out 1/4 inch or so, this will stick up inside the block, and then the seal in the block will stick down about 1/4 inch, and it will sit in here just how we want. So if we do something like that, and you can see how this is sticking out just a little bit, that's sticking in. This lip is on the bearing side, so we're good there. And we got that pin out, so this one is ready to go back in. Before we put it in, I do want to run a bead of some gasket sealer right here along this edge, and then we'll put just a dab
on the end of the seal at each spot here before we put it up in the car. Now I can go put the seal in the car and then put this in the car. And when putting this seal in the car, remember, make sure that the lip is on the crankshaft side. The rest of the motor, that's this lip right here. And remember on the bearing cap, we had that piece clocked actually just this way. So we want to make sure that this end is sticking down over here. So we'll put this end in first, and as we feed it around, we just won't quite feed it all the way, so this will be sticking out about 1/4 inch on this side. And when you put this in there, you want to kind of drive it around in a circle like so. And so just a little bit of patience, putting this in there, and it should just work itself all the way around. Okay, what I was doing there is there's a metal rod inside this seal, and so I just used a punch and I just lightly tap it and just continue to just drive it around this crank, and it'll finish out right where you want. It's hard to see, but there's about 1/4 inch sticking down there. Now we can go ahead and put the bearing cap in place, and don't forget to put that RTV or that gasket maker on the ends of those pieces on the bearing cap before you put it in there. All right, we got the edges coated here on this bearing cap. We got a little bit on the end of each part of the seal. Now we can go ahead and put this in place. All right, now that we got that snugged up, now we can go ahead and torque these back down. The book says 60 to 70 pounds, so we'll split the difference and do 65 pounds on this cap. And then we're ready to put the rest of the gasket in place. All right, once you get that cap torqued down, then you want to go ahead and put some of that gasket maker here in the corners on both sides of these bearing caps. And then you also want to put it here on where the water pump meets up with the block. You want to put it on both sides because it's an uneven surface and you don't want anything to leak out there. And then of course in the corners here by where that cap is there. And then because I'm using the Velcro, it's got these easy installation pins. We just thread them up inside these bolt holes here, and that'll help us align the gasket while we put the oil pan on. All right, once you get all these fasteners in around the pan, you can go ahead and attack the ones on the ends here. And what we need to do is just take a screwdriver and just back out these pins, and then the screws will just fit right in place. All right, so now those bolts are in, everything's good. Now from here, it's just a reverse of what we did. We'll go ahead and put the starter back in. We'll hook the idle arm back up, and then we can go ahead and put oil in here because we already did the oil filter, so we're good there. We can go ahead and put oil back in here, and then we're good to go. The only thing that we're not gonna do is the subframe bar that I busted off. I'm gonna have to address that in another video because we gotta cut open the frame and weld new nuts in there to hold the bolts that hold the subframe. So we'll look for that in another video. But other than that, everything else is the same as just taking it apart. Let's just go ahead and put it together, and then we'll be done. All right. Normally this is the part where we'd plug everything up here and we'd fire it up and make sure everything's good. But before I do that, I still need to tackle those nuts for that subframe snafu that I had earlier. So I'm sure you caught that. I twisted the head off of one of the bolts, and the other bolts just sat there and spun inside the frame, so I had to cut it off. That's okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'll do another video where I'll show you how I access those nuts and get those replaced and get them welded in there, and then we'll do that next. So other than that, guys, this is it. This is how you do a rear main seal on a 289 or a 302, anything before 83, I believe is the year. And then if you have that rope seal in there that I didn't know that was in there, but don't try to drive it out with a punch. You're just going to jam it up inside there. There's a tool called, I think it's called a Sneaky Pete. You can try that. It's basically the same thing that screw that I use, but it's a little more flexible, and it should allow you to thread that up inside that rope seal a little more, and then you can pull that out. Mine came out in pieces, probably because it's so old. You guys should be able to do the same thing, get it done, but we got the new rear main seals in there, and those are a lot better and good to go. Other than that, that's the end of this one, guys. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up, and if you subscribe, I appreciate it because it helps my channel out, and we'll see you in the next one.